Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 267th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. This month's theme is about gatekeeping in the workplace. And don't forget, the podcast is now fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have 5 years worth of podcasts to reflect back on. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it here at bit.ly/DMPG23. So last episode, I defined gatekeeping and what it is. This episode is all about how to handle, deal with, or manage gatekeepers. Now, a gatekeeper can be very challenging to identify as it may not target one specific person. Gatekeepers can also separate themselves by holding knowledge, information, or resources in order to leverage their importance. And often, gatekeeping can be cloaked in the appearance of innocent errors, so not inviting you to a meeting, or good intentions towards some and not others. So it's not a uniform process. And some people, when you try and bring it up, will say, oh no, but that person's lovely and they gave me these opportunities. Of course, you get gatekeeping in families too, but we are focusing on the workplace today. Now, gatekeeping is different to respecting rules and maintaining professional boundaries, which are not centered on political game playing and manipulation. They are centered on looking after one's well-being, being really clear about policies and procedures, and communicating them in an open and transparent way. So if you've missed that, go back and listen to the previous episode, number 266. And once you've identified gatekeepers in your life, you might then be thinking, well, okay, now I've worked out who they are. How do I manage them? And generally, how your interactions with them are influencing you can become more intentional, and you can start to plan ways and strategies in ways which you want to mitigate things. Now, gatekeeping is what it says on the tin because it stops you from reaching your full potential, having access to resources, and being seen by the right people who could elevate your career in many cases. And in fact, gatekeepers can prevent you from being able to see what your own potential is because you start to question yourself and thinking, well, wait a second, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I don't have the skills that I thought I'd cultivated. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of this podcast so far. And if you've listened to lots of episodes of the last 5 years and want to keep it up to date, then why not join my newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you'll receive a copy of my white paper on inclusive language and mental health. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. Okay, so given what I just said then, how do you navigate with this situation and manage gatekeepers? So the first thing I would say is work on a strategy once you've identified them, who they are, who they might be. Work on a strategy with friends and colleagues and people you trust. Ask the questions, you know what, I'm experiencing this. Have you experienced anything similar, and what worked for you? Or what are your thoughts on this strategy? Or what are your thoughts on how I could navigate this situation? And this can be really helpful. And when I say colleagues, it doesn't have to be colleagues you work with. It can be colleagues you've worked with previously, who are maybe now friends. It could be family members. You could even post on forums, because I think this is quite useful to get a bird's eye view. What you don't want to happen, though, is, when we ask people for advice, it's helpful, but we get lots of different versions. And I think when that happens, then it can be overwhelming. So think about maybe 2 or 3 people that you want to talk this through with to help you start to strategize. The other thing you might want to do is, if you're thinking, oh, I don't know if this is in my head, is to document instances where you feel someone might have blocked you in terms of, the access and the resources, and also document these things securely and perhaps keep them away from the workplace. So if you feel confident about storing it on a password protected work a spreadsheet or document in on your work drive, that's fine. But you might want to have a notebook and write things down so you can see the connections. The other thing you might want to do is to create an ally map. So this can really help you gain insight into the connections and the people who are going to help you and elevate you to where you need to be. And often allies will be outside the organization. I remember when I had a horrendous manager who was such a gatekeeper, one of the things I did is I called upon my global majority mentoring circle. So they were all outside the organization in corporate jobs. I called on people that had won, Asian Women's Awards and reached out to them and had conversations with them around how they'd navigated things. And they became allies. And that's the thing. You might find that you have allies in the social media space as well, to have a call out for people to elevate your posts, to help you get seen, to put in a good word for you. So that's a really useful thing. The other thing you might like to do is to consider the gatekeeper's preferred communication style. So, what is it and how do they hear things? So, for example, you might be really keen on innovation and starting new projects, and they might just be all about managing risk. So, if when they hear innovation, they flip out, obviously internally, maybe externally a little bit, and they want to just put a lid on things. Whereas if you twist it and you pitch it around risk aversion, reputational risk, improving that could really help them to hear that. So if you want to know more, then I am trained in Tetramap, and check out my blog all about this. And my blog's entitled Inclusive Leadership is a Journey, Not a Destination, where I talk about authentic communication styles. So I want to be clear that this isn't about manipulating things, but it's about changing the way in which you pitch things so that they're heard. And of course, if you've got allies that can help you with this, it's really useful. If you know other senior people in the organization who can back you up, that's also really useful, because the likelihood is that a gatekeeper wants to look very impressive in front of people who are more senior to them. Then consider where you have more control and leverage. And this could be with your expertise. This could be with your particular skills around, maybe it's public speaking. Perhaps it's around your expertise in a particular methodology, pivot tables. It could be anything. It could be your connections internally and externally, and senior people you know. So this can be really useful. So perhaps you don't want to explain the situation or label someone a gatekeeper or use that word, but what are the things you have more control and leverage on? And using that and adding that as part of your strategies. And then external projects and hobbies. So this can be a really good one, because maybe it's a bit exhausting, and it is exhausting, not maybe, it is exhausting battling this kind of behavior in the workplace. So what are some external projects and hobbies without adding to your mental load? Perhaps they're things that you're already doing that can bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be, but you're doing things externally to give you some space away from the fray. Now, it might be that many of you are on charity boards, because that gives you a lot of strategic sway. It could be that you are involved in community groups, that you're doing your own particular kind of activism, and that gives you what you need away from the workplace, and it's building your skills. So don't forget the skills that you're building. And if you trust those people in those circles, is to chat to them and say, you know what, do you know of any opportunities? I really enjoy doing this work. Because perhaps then that leads me on to the fact that you might need to think about your exit strategy. We can try, but we know that we can't change someone's behavior. We have to think about our own well-being first. So what does an exit strategy look like for you? How might you like to implement this? How long do you want to give it in your current role? And if you try all the strategies that you can with your gatekeeper and nothing's budging, what do you need, and what do you feel like you deserve or want to do? And then, of course, in order to do that, you need to ensure that your support networks and mechanisms are in place. So these could be people, these can be face-to-face networks, this can be online networks, and also the mechanisms. So what do I mean by the mechanisms? I mean the mechanisms around your well-being and mental health, and making sure that you have the time to do this, which I know is easier said than done, because most of us have many different types of caring responsibilities, busy lives. So it is thinking about this practically and realistically, but also knowing that we can step away. And to add to this, actually, one of the techniques with gatekeepers can also be around considering your boundaries and where they are, and are you overworking? And maybe you don't have a choice in that's the way the job is, that's the way the situation is right now. But you may have read lots of articles about quiet quitting, which is in fact just doing your job and not going beyond this. So what are your hours, and can you stick to your hours if the gatekeeping behavior is going on? And being really clear about this. And of course, if you're juggling many things, caring responsibilities, pets, hobbies, activism, people have a lot going on in their lives. How do you want to prioritize this? And that can then play into your exit strategy. And sometimes we just need to give ourselves a breather. So when I talk about the navigation and dealing with and managing, I'm not trying to add to your workload. I'm trying to think about, well, what are the ways in which you might like to navigate this realistically with the resources that you have? And a phrase that I've been thinking about a lot lately is from the brilliant, incredible tennis player and icon Arthur Ashe. And he said, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And I think this is so helpful, and something that I've been thinking about a lot, not in relation to gatekeeping, but in relation to other things that are happening for me. So I hope this has been a useful series. And is this a subject that you'd like to know more about? Because I run workshops, training sessions, and keynotes for organizations all about creating positive, happy, and equal workplaces. And managing boundaries, mental health, and bullying is absolutely a core part of what I do. So please get in touch to find out more about how I could help you at Layla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. I really hope you've enjoyed today's show and shows over the last 5 years. If you have, why not write me a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from? And as always, you can send me a note anonymously or with your name on SpeakPipe, and that link is bit.ly/spkpdmp. And don't forget my TEDx talk, where I talk about my experience of navigating gatekeeping, actually, and the connection between culture, race, and mental health. And it's just 12 minutes long, something that you can watch in your break. And that link is bit.ly/TEDx Wolveslo. And if you enjoy it, please do leave a positive comment on YouTube, share, and like. And also don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm no longer on Twitter, but you can catch me on the other two. And next episode, I'm going to be talking about how goodwill but well-being creates positive inclusion. And the resources for today's episodes are the Dusty Dreamers article, How to Identify the Gatekeepers in Your Life Who Put Limitations on You, Career Contessa, How to Deal with Gatekeepers at Work, my blog, Inclusive Leadership is a Journey, Not a Destination, and Minding the Workplace, the New Workplace Institute blog hosted by David Yamada from 2011. Really great blog, actually. So do check that out, even though, it might be considered older. It's really, really great. So I hope you've enjoyed this series, and take care, everyone. And of course, it is been a packed month full of news, and I don't know, it's an interesting place where we are. So hopefully we'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, everyone, take care and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.